This show is sponsored by Realtor Cynthia Bear, Putting Down Roots. Visit your in-town real estate specialist in Atlanta at cynthiabaer.com.
You are now tuned in to the Good Gracious Show. Welcome.
It's Sunday, May 19th. I'm Boyd Baker, your friendly podcast host today on the Good Gracious Show. So I appreciate you tuning in to this episode 132 with some really beautiful people. Darrah Brustein is one who falls into the change maker category, right? She's very fascinating, very intelligent, very thoughtful about how we make change in our lives and decide what we want that change to be in others as well. You know, how do you make a better world? Well, starts at yourself, right? So anyway, sat down with her as well as musician and just all-around great guy, Tyler Jarvis. And we talked about music, how he came into it, and what it means to him. So those are some great things going on there. Otherwise, it's mayhem, as I call it, the end of the school year. For those of you who have kids, good luck, prayers. Maybe you've already finished up. My high school kids, it's all coming to a head this coming week. But with one of them graduating, fingers crossed, everything gets to the finish line. But it's a great time, and it's starting to feel like summer here in the South. Here in Atlanta, it's getting into the upper 80s on a regular basis. So we may be on board to a very hot summer. But that's another tale altogether. So I hope you enjoy.
So my name is Tyler Jarvis. I am 25. I live up in Marietta, Georgia, and I'm a singer-songwriter, storyteller. That's kind of what my claim to fame.
That's your business card.
That's my business card. Yeah, that's
tattoo on
my
your
elevator
back.
pitch. Yeah. But yeah, I love to write songs. I love to sing them for people sometimes, and I just love to get to tell stories and make them up and tell ones that are true and maybe that are sort of true and all of the in-betweens. And
do you find yourself writing for others, or do you have that as part of your process that, hey man, if somebody wants to pay me for a song, I'm in? Or
yes.
Do you feel like you own them all?
Yes, I love the idea of, I have a lot of friends that I write with, and we write songs for them and we write songs for nobody and just for the sake of writing songs. It's one of those things where even though it's fun, it's also a craft. I think you just get better and better as you do it more and more, like anything. But just the way that I am and the things that I love to perform. I love to play live, and I love to kind of be a showman. Like that's what I love about music, is what you can do with a band and live and all that kind of stuff. So I would say I lean to the side of, I have a hold on all these songs, but I love writing for other people and writing with other people.
And how do you decide who you're going to write with? Is that just people you know? And I got to think that's a little bit of a challenging creative process, because you're taking a stab that you're going to be able to get along or be as open as you need to be, or whatever the case may be.
It is. It's weird, because when you write songs with someone, it's different from any collaboration I've ever done before, because you're letting them in to what could be a very vulnerable part of you.
A little bit of a therapy session sometimes.
It could be, whether good or bad. And so so I think what I've just tried to do is find people that I think have similar beliefs as me and think the same way, but also have differing views, just to get different perspectives, but just find ways to relate to people. And that's what I've realized is the best kind of co-writing sessions I've had, or writing with people, is just people that relate and understand. Just kind of who I am, but also where I am and what life looks like for me. And those are the people that normally things.
Have you ever had those sessions that just didn't work out?
Oh yes, plenty.
Really?
Plenty. Yeah.
I can understand getting into a block sometimes. You just can't get through a project. But when you say, like 5 minutes in, you go, "Oh, this is going to be a long."
Yes, yeah. I don't, without naming names.
Yeah.
I remember there was one instance in particular where it was just very obvious the idea that we were writing on. I had one view, and this person had a separate view, and it just, I knew, and maybe they knew, this is just not going to work.
Yeah.
So it made for a long hour and a half.
So how do you do that then? So at the end of that hour and a half, do you go, "Yeah, okay, great, let's do this"? I mean, there's got to be some kind of coda put on it, right?
It's funny, yeah. And I think there's a fine line between, at the end of the day, it's just business. Business is business. But at the same time also, and this is more personal for me, I love the idea of, with writers or with just musicians or people in the industry in general, I love to make relationships. That's what I think, first and foremost. Like, I want to write with people because I'm either friends with them or somebody I want to get to know. I want to know their story. And so I think first and foremost, that's my thing is, okay, is this somebody that I can see myself hanging out with? And if that's a no immediately, I think you got to give it one shot. But if it's a no after that, it's like, all right.
Yeah, no harm, no foul.
No harm, no foul.
Right.
But this just probably isn't going to work.
Yeah.
But then from a business standpoint, like, if it just isn't working, it's better for both of you to go and be doing other things with the hour and a half that you spend writing a
You only get so many hour and a half, so they say.
Exactly. So
when did you start playing music, or did you come from a musical family, or what was your backstory?
So I started playing music when I've been singing since I was 7 or 8. I grew up singing in the church and that kind of thing. And so been singing for a long time, and I did musical theater for a little while when I was younger, when I was like 8 or 9, and then
you got burnt out, didn't you? I don't need that musical theater anymore.
No, but I believe that baseball was way cooler than musical theater. That's what it was. So so I sang almost most of my life. And when I was 13, my dad, it's really funny. I love telling this story. So my dad, one year for Christmas, bought me and my brother one of those it's like a box Walmart guitar. It's comes with like an amp, a music stand, and
3 picks.
And then a guitar. And he says, we're going to take guitar lessons. And secretly, he's never admitted this, but I really do think this is the case. He bought himself a really nice guitar that year for Christmas.
That was his excuse.
I think that was his excuse to Mom to buy a really nice guitar was, I'm going to take lessons with the boys. It's going to be great. And I think it was, we got it for Christmas. We got guitar for Christmas. And then probably about a month later, we started guitar lessons at a Sam Ash. It's a music store in Cincinnati, Ohio. And we started taking guitar lessons. And I remember after the first lesson, I was hooked. I didn't really know why. I didn't know what it was about it. But I remember after the first lesson, I went and took all sorts of like songs and tabs and all this kind of, just tried to figure out every song that I could. And it ended up changing my life.
What about your brother?
So my brother is probably the most musically talented out of all of my family. He just has a natural knack to play anything, but just never was super interested.
In the guitar?
No, so he played guitar with us for a little while, and then he's like, I want to play drums. So he got a drum set, all that kind of stuff. Started taking lessons, got pretty good, and then was like, I don't want to do that anymore. And now he's on this bass kick. And he sends me videos like weekly of like, look at this song I learned on bass. I'm like, you're better at me than me on guitar.
Right.
So it's just crazy. So he's probably the most musically inclined, but just...
And did your dad keep with the lessons, or did he learn?
Yeah, Dad still plays.
Oh, that's awesome.
It's not as much of a... It's more just fun for him.
Yeah.
It's just a fun hobby, and he's got guitars laying all over the house and all that kind of stuff.
Now he's got too many in his mother's.
Exactly. So
crazy.
Mom's like, we got to get rid of these.
Yeah. It can become an addiction. I've learned that from some musicians.
My dad always will say to me, his motto has become, how many guitars does a guitar player need? Just one more.
Yeah.
It's always just one more. So
that's funny.
Yeah.
Funny. And so then did you start writing songs too, or had you been writing before? Or did you just think you just wanted to play?
I immediately just wanted to play. I loved
just like covering whatever you could.
Yeah, and back then when I was in 7th grade, the fun songs to play were like the Jonas Brothers or I remember Jack Johnson was really big back then.
And it's kind of easy and lyrical.
It's pretty easy. Yeah. And I remember Jason Mraz and guys like that where the songs were pretty easy. So for me as a not very good guitar player, it was a very low barrier of entry.
Right.
But I started really getting into playing in my youth group at church and was able to play on Sunday mornings and play with
like
the band.
Forced practice every week.
Exactly, yeah. And so it was awesome because the church I went to was a big church, and so they had all the
gear.
And all the gear. And so from a really, what I would call a young age, I was probably 15 when I started doing that, I had a lot of resources. And had a lot of just the ability to play on a fairly like high level of production, which was so fun. And as a 15-year-old, you're like just wide-eyed, like this is amazing.
Well, that's got to be. I mean, on some level now, if you play around and you're playing wherever you can get a gig, it's got to be like, did I peak too early?
It's a little humbling, let me tell you.
Yeah, we got a chair right next to the bathroom for you over there.
That's
buddy.
Exactly it. I play at some of these places in Atlanta where they're like, "Do you have a sound system?" Yeah. All right, bring it because we don't have one.
Yeah.
That's just the way. It is.
And if you want a light, put a flashlight on you.
Exactly. Yeah.
We don't have lighting either.
Yes. So. It is, but that was really what piqued my initial love of. It was just this transfer.
But you also had this huge audience.
Yeah.
You see, it's unfair on so many levels because you go like, man, this is awesome because they're forced to be there with you.
Yeah. Yes.
And you're there too.
It's not about any of us.
Right.
So, but it was just this, I felt like it was just natural transfer of like, me playing in my bedroom with my little looper that I would loop stuff over and over again, and it just became this thing that has slowly blossomed into what it is now of getting to write songs and play them for people, and I've got to play all over the Southeast and some of the Midwest and that kind of thing. So
that's awesome.
It's really fun.
So when you play, do you prefer to play solo or do you like playing with a?
Oh, I want to play with the band.
Really?
Always.
Yeah. Band's way better. Huh?
Yes. Love playing with the band.
So when you say band, what does that mean though?
Yeah. So I love playing with, so I've got a crew that I play with. And it's more so like ticketed shows and that kind of thing, more of like the stuff that I'm promoting really heavily and whatnot. And so normally my ideal band consists of, aside from myself, and I like to switch between guitar and keys. That's my piano. That's kind of my natural rhythm on stage and whatnot. And so my ideal setup is I like to have an electric guitar player, a piano player, a keys player, a drummer, and a bass player, and then myself. And I've got a crew of some guys that are just
you've
awesome.
Got that. Yeah, you've got that relationship.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Some of us have played together for a long time. My drummer and I have played together for a couple years now. We moved down to Atlanta together to do music from Ohio. And so we've been playing together for a long time. And then my bass player I've known since college. And so we've played together a fair amount of times too. And so it's just fun.
Well, now I'm just curious, this whole thing is about us kind of a Southern pride thing. What brought you to the South?
Yeah.
From Ohio.
Yeah.
Not that I think that's an odd thing, just so you know.
No, I love the South. And I love Ohio too. Don't get me wrong. I got to say that, but
it's no election. You're not.
It's no election. Yeah, I'm not getting elected.
Okay.
Yeah. So I went to school in the Chattanooga area. So I went to Lee University, which is up in Cleveland, Tennessee. So it's about 30 minutes north of Chattanooga. And so I spent 4 years in Chattanooga and fell in love with the place. And then as I was about to graduate, I was like, all right, I'm not going to move away. And then a month later, I moved back to Ohio. And so just spent a lot of time kind of soul searching and figuring out what it was I wanted to do. And so when I was in Ohio, I realized, okay, I'm going to go for this music thing. I'm going to really dig in and try and do this professionally. That was kind of my turning point because I've been writing. I'd always written songs in college and played all the time in college, but never really had said like, okay, definitively, I want this to be my profession. And so when I was in Ohio, I kind of started making moves toward that. I recorded a couple singles and put those out to Spotify and iTunes, and they're on Napster too, which I don't know if anybody uses Napster anymore. But so I started doing music up in Ohio, and then I had an opportunity to I work for a family of churches in Atlanta. It's the Grace family of churches, and we have 6 campuses within the greater Atlanta area. So we have a campus in Midtown, my campus in Marietta, Snellville, we're just kind of all over the place. And then a campus up in DC. And so I was contacted about taking the job as the worship director and kind of creative guy at the Marietta campus. And so it kind of just felt like it all was aligning to, and made sense professionally, and also it's nice to have a full-time gig while trying to be a musician. Yeah. So it just all really did feel like it was the right timing. And so about a year and a half ago, I moved down to Atlanta and have loved it. And
so honestly, you're not wanting to get back? I mean, I know it's March and you're going to miss Ohio in March. But. Yeah.
I actually got a picture a week ago of snow that's still on the ground in March in Ohio. Truthfully, I do miss Tennessee. I love the state of Tennessee.
Is it the hills?
Yeah. It's just, oh man, it's just a beautiful place. I actually just released a song it was about a month ago, called In the Fall, but that's what the song is about. It's like,
it reminds you of
Tennessee, and it's like love in the fall. It's just, to me, I'm just a romantic person about everything, and my friends would get annoyed by it. But but it's just hard for me not to be like romantic about like the changing of the leaves and just the rolling hills of the Smokies, and so.
Well, that's cool. Yeah. Well, glad you're here. So, how have you found your musical progression? Building. It sounds like you've got a band that you get to play with, and I'm guessing you do side stuff on your own as well when you need to. Do you have any major recording plans or anything, or what's going on? Yeah, so I just released an EP back in June of 2018. So it's 5 songs, and before that I had released 2 singles on my own, and so I have a decent amount of content available and to listen to, and which has really been fun because the heart, as a musician, when you say like, all right, I want to do this professionally, it's like, well, what am I going to play at live shows? All I know is covers. And so it's I really am now at a fun point where most of the shows that I'm playing, aside from like the bar gigs and the side stuff, most of the shows I'm playing are my stuff with, sprinkled in fun covers of, like we do a Heartless cover by Kanye West, which is really fun. And, we have a Shania Twain cover that we do, and it's really fun. But aside from that, it's all Tyler Jarvis originals, which is awesome. And so it was fun because in Atlanta, it's so cool. This is what I love about music. The scene everywhere is just different. You go to Nashville, and it's all the songwriters and the writers rounds. People just getting up there with an acoustic guitar singing their song. In Atlanta, it's all about the jam scene. So I have a really good friend of mine that he's one of the first people I met music-wise in Atlanta, named Cody Matlock, and he hosted a jam at a place called Darwin's over in, I want to say it's in Sandy Springs, I think. Sandy Springs. And so I remember being told, oh, you got to go to Darwin's on Thursday and play with Cody. And so me and Cody have become good friends, and he has been, helped me just see the scene and kind of laid it out for me and whatnot. But truthfully, what I think it comes down to, it doesn't matter where you are. It's just a matter of go out, go to shows, meet people, be bold, and things will happen. Yeah. Like whether the grand scheme of it is what you want, that's
kind of more based off of your goals. But if you want to just meet people, if you want to start playing and you want to find guys to play with, just go be in the scene. And it's amazing what could happen to think when I first moved here, I knew my roommate, who's my drummer, and my boss and then my coworkers, kind of. Yeah. And now I have a band that I'm playing with and playing venues like Eddie's Attic and Smith's Old Bar and the Red Clay Music Theater and all these places that, are well-known venues around the world. Oh, yeah. And so, maybe not around the world, but at least in the United States. And so
there's a lot of people from all over the place.
No disrespect to those places either. So, but yeah. And so I truthfully, I think what did the most for me was to just go be available and be there to meet people and shake hands. And I think it goes back to what I always want to I want to know people's stories. Yeah. And I don't want to just be the guy that only hangs out with when people need a singer or a keys player or whatever. I want to be the guy that's like, hey, let's go grab a beer, and then next week let's go play music. Like that to me is what this whole thing's about, what life is about. But yeah.
Well, if people want to learn more about you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, so I think probably the two easiest ways are to go on my website. It's www.thetylerjarvis.com. It's super easy. And it was just the domain that was available. I don't feel that entitled to put the Tyler Jarvis in front of me. It was just available. But that's, so they can go to my website, and that's where all my tour dates and all my music and merch and all that kind of stuff is available. And then probably my Instagram, which is where I do most of the social stuff, the same kind of content, and I'm always posting about shows and where I'm playing and all that kind of stuff. And then that's just at the Tyler Jarvis as well, trying to keep it cohesive.
There you go. But that's all you can do.
That's all you can do. Yeah.
Well, thanks for coming in, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. It was fun. My name's Tyler Jarvis, and this song is called Revelry. Beneath the stars, the angels sing tonight. From a distance, the herd from out of sight. To invite this world into the trees, to let us see what kings should truly be. Standing gathered from everywhere they'll come, filled with laughter from what they know is love. And by the whispers of the trees and fire, all will know their one and true desire. Waiting for this treasured time, as we are blinded by the sight. Today comes and all we know is gone. We'll shake the dust and end the lust of fear that haunts us here. And all these people waiting here to see how to escape the grips of misery. The way, the truth, and only life that guides these souls and leads the mighty fight. Raising voices like a choir in the night. David's words forever being lifted high. And through the night we danced around the fire and sang as one, the great and mighty choir. Waiting for this treasured time, as we are blinded by the sight. Till day comes and all we know is gone. We'll shake the dust and end the lust of fear that haunts us here.
And by the morning, we'll find a fortune as we sing out beneath the moon. 'Cause in the air, this feeling is revelry. We're letting go of all that we know. In the fire, we leave our fear for us to breathe.
Well, I'm Darrah, and I do a lot of things. Actually, hilariously, that question is my least favorite question because I never know how to answer it well because I have so many different things that I do. I'd say the easiest way is I'm an entrepreneur and an author.
Okay. Is that what you want on your gravestone?
I don't think I want what I do on my gravestone.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, I have to decide if I want to be buried or not.
No, you can just have a gravestone.
That's fair.
Okay.
That's fair.
So, entrepreneur and author.
Yes.
So, how did you get started in your entrepreneurship?
I was laid off 3 times during the height of the recession. I also was in your neighborhood and had a restraining order against my landlord when I was 22, 23, and decided to buy a house so that I wouldn't have that ever happen again. And I did that in September of 2007, which couldn't have been a worse time to do that. Yeah. And 3 months later, I lost my first job in the fashion industry. So at that point, it started what ended up being sort of this domino effect of losing job after job because of the economy at the time. And at that point, I stopped and I thought, it's time to question this fable that I've been told that you get a job and it's really secure and stable and that's how everything works. And I realized this isn't working for me. And I reflected back to being a kid and I remembered, 1, loving to sell things, and 2, always saying I wanted a business. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to debunk all of the myths that people keep telling me of you're an entitled millennial who's unwilling to wait their turn and be patient, and go out and do the thing that I always knew I wanted to, which was start a business.
Well, there you go. That was easy.
Yeah. I mean, if only it were that easy from then on out. But that was 10 years ago. Step. And exactly, it's like deciding or admitting you have a problem is the first step. So that's where it began.
Yeah. And so what was your passion or your focus as far as work? Was it just independent sales or finding the right product?
Well, so I have a twin brother, and I was very fortunate to have him approach me around this time. And he said to me, I discovered a niche within the credit card processing world, and I'd love to start this company with you. And my initial reaction was laughing at him. And I thought, I've been in all these sexy industries. Yeah, I don't think this is for me. Like, how dare you say that I should be in boring old credit card processing? But then I paused and I thought, you know what? I have nothing else going on. Let me at least learn about this. So I did, and what I was able to do by kind of being the devil's advocate to him for about a solid week was that I realized there was so much at the core of what that service offered that I already knew I loved and was great at, like sales, like building relationships with business owners, like learning about different industries, like helping people with their bottom line in their business to help them save money. And I realized I could fall in love with the service because the day-to-day things really aligned with what I was good at and enjoyed.
Wow. Well, then that seems like a perfect match. Do you continue to do that, or did that just get you going?
Both. So 10 years later, we grew that business into 38 states through a lot of ups and downs, trials and tribulations. And it hit a point for me, I'd say around 5 years in, where I realized I was no longer growing and learning in that industry, that it was time for me to reinvest some of my energy that I was able to displace because I had grown teams and I had been able to remove myself from the center of the business at that point to invest that into other spaces. And accidentally, I'd already started my second company called Network Under 40 because a friend from undergrad had moved back to Atlanta a couple years prior and had said, how do you make friends after college? everywhere I go, I'm getting hit on, sold to, or everyone's my parents' age, and I'm just looking to meet my peers. And I thought, well, I love to connect people. I actually think it's my superpower. I can't think of a single place to do that. And I was deeply intertwined into the networking space in Atlanta with my credit card processing company. So I said, why don't I just start it for you? And what I did simply to help my friend ended up growing and growing and growing to the point now, 8 years later, it's 3 or 4 cities. We're 30,000 people that we serve. And it became this business completely by accident. So I was able to then transmute some of the energy and time from Business One into Business Two, whereas Business One, all these years later, still operates. I still work in it, but I spend about 3 to 5% of my time on it.
Well, that's the way you want it to be.
It's fantastic.
Yeah, if it
dream.
doesn't cause your crisis and your mental stress, then it still works.
Exactly.
Well, so is the network here in Atlanta as well as 3 or 4, and how did you choose to do that? I mean, why did you choose to branch out? Was it because somebody said, "Oh, I'm moving to Charlotte, and let's do this there too"?
Sort of. So I picked Atlanta obviously because that's where she asked and that's where we were, and it grew quite large actually to be the largest young professional organization in the city. And from there, it was through press. There was press that we didn't anticipate. I had a writer for Inc. magazine show up to one of our events unbeknownst to me, and all of a sudden this article came out talking about why networking events are horrible and that the only one that they thought was worth attending was ours.
What?
And I thought, wow, our little one city event in Atlanta. And he basically said exactly what our values were, that here's a place where it's about who you are, not what you do. And it's not just a big old business card exchange or anything guising itself as real relationship building. So all of a sudden we started getting inquiries from people all over the place, like literally all over the world, saying, how do we bring this to our city? And I had no intentions of expanding it at that point. I hadn't systemized anything. I really hadn't thought about it. So I just got on the phone with a lot of these people and gave them free advice. And many of them circled back and said, I really struggled. Here's the problem. Can you help me further? And so I thought, you know what, I'm going to put a lot of intention and energy into making this something that I can structure and help people do elsewhere. So the first city I chose was Baltimore because it's where I grew up. So I already had my second largest network there, and I thought I can find someone here to operate it and test this out. And it went really great. So the next market we did was DC because of proximity and because I found the right person to operate it locally. And then the other city that we're in is Nashville. Similarly, because of the proximity to Atlanta, there's a fair amount of reputational equity that we get from that.
Yeah. Huh. And so did you immediately when you started the network, though, did you start it as a business or did you?
No. So
where did you decide we're going to monetize this?
Well, people paid for the first event, but it was simply to offset costs. And because I went to Emory for undergrad and I sat on their board and I still sit on their board. And for years, I would volunteer to plan a lot of their social events for alumni. And I learned from that experience that when people don't invest something monetarily into what they're doing, they value it differently, and psychologically, they're less attached to it. So I would see retention be about 50% return on registering versus attending. So I thought, well, I think people need to pay something, even a nominal amount. So I charged $10 out of the gate just to get people's buy-in, both physically and mentally. And we had 94 people show up at the first event. And I thought, oh, this is great. I can pay my expenses. I made a little bit of money. And then it was the only reason I continued to do it was because everyone asked me to do it again. And then again, and then again. And at some point I thought, this isn't a fluke. I should actually do something with this. So I did.
So where do you go from there then?
Well, as everyone would predict, I wrote a children's book next.
About networking.
No, actually, well, hilariously not. It was about financial literacy. So as we have chatted about, a lot of my early adulthood was hot and heavy in the recession. And I think like many kids, I didn't realize that the way I was raised was unlike how everyone else is raised, that you have unique things that happen in your house that you don't realize are different. And for me, one of those unique things was that my parents were really proactive about teaching my brothers and I about financial responsibility, to the point that in middle school, we were investing in the stock market and learning about mutual funds and Roth IRAs.
Were your parents financial advisors or something?
My father was a career executive in financial services, and my mom was a career entrepreneur. So it was this beautiful hybrid that they intentionally brought these lessons to us. But I didn't realize other people weren't necessarily getting that until all my friends started coming to me when the economy collapsed. And they would say, I'm making six figures, I'm not saving any money. And I'm thinking, I'm making a third of what you're making. The only debt I have is this mortgage and my car payment. How is that even possible? And that's when it sort of hit me that, okay, if this is happening throughout our country and then later globally, this is more of an epidemic than just my friends. So I thought, what's a way that I can be helpful? And I've always been a writer. I've always loved to write. And I realized I have these lessons and I've lived them. And so I looked at the market and I already knew that a lot of these tools existed for adults. I was a student of them myself, but they didn't exist for children in a way that didn't require a parent to regurgitate the information to their child. So I sat down and wrote a series of children's books that would do that, and put an appendix in the back so that the adult in the child's life could, without fear, help institute it into their home.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Did you self-publish? Did you?
I did.
Of course.
You
weren't going to go.
Well, I spent a solid 6 months researching traditional publishing versus self-publishing. And I think that there's a time and a place for both. Ironically, I'm traditionally publishing a book right now. However, for this, I felt like my dream at the time was to make it the baby Einstein of financial literacy. Yeah. And to do that, I needed to own all of the intellectual property, and I needed to have more skin in the game than a couple cents per copy. Also, I understood that with publishing, you need a platform for them to want to back you. And mine was a niche within a niche. And I didn't have a platform with children and parents. So I went off and did it on my own.
And how did it do?
It did well, but candidly, it never did as well as I had hoped. And it was one of those many entrepreneurial lessons where I realized you have to go with the current. And after really kind of, this sounds aggressive, but beating my head against the wall for a couple years, trying to get it in with every major financial advisory and bank and financial institution, and getting to the CMOs of all of them and getting a lot of positive response, I realized there's a difference between lip service and action and purchases. And I learned that there was just so much regulation around what they could do in that space that it didn't make sense, and that there wasn't enough margin to really do a full-out marketing campaign for a book for a couple dollars of margin. So I let it operate really passively now. And I know in my heart of hearts that there will be a time again where it's going to rebirth.
Yeah. Well, that's what you have to do, right? You have to believe that. That's what keeps you buoyed when you're not feeling like all the ideas are brilliant. Though they're brilliant. It's just that the rest of the world hasn't caught up yet. Or I could have just let it go and never do it again. But I do truly know that this is valuable material and that there's not a lot of ways that people are learning it. So whether it's through me or through others, I'm a believer that these are important lessons that we need to be imparting on our young children. Oh, definitely. I have horrible financial skills, and my father's an accountant.
No way.
Yeah, and he's not pleased with this, but, that's just the way it is.
Yeah, it's tough. I think as parents, there's so many things that you have to handle on a minute-to-minute and day-by-day basis that some of the things that are important get pushed to the wayside for the urgent. Mm-hmm. And so no matter what someone's own personal skill set is, let alone those who don't feel super well-equipped with it, it's not necessarily something that you know how to break down for your kids.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. And it's also finances, I think, for a lot of people are kind of intimidating.
Absolutely.
And even though it's just money, it's all like you said, even the regulations and all the rules, and there's banks and finances, this and that and the other. It gets overwhelming. People say, okay, I leave that to somebody else. It's not me.
Absolutely.
So, well, that's crazy. So now, what's your next book? What's your next project? What's your next?
I've been in the long, arduous process of writing the next book, which I'm about a year into my proposal writing with my agent. And this book is going to be on intentionally designing your life and defining success for yourself, building businesses to integrate with those dreams and fund them, and networks to support you and your visions.
That is a really long title, I got to be honest.
That's not the title. But that's
not.
Sort of the thesis. So.
Yeah. Wow. And so have you already written it, or have you or do you just have the chapter outlines?
Well, so in a proposal process, it's about 70 pages, much like the business plan for your book, where you write 3 full chapters and an introduction. You have a synopsis of every chapter and the outline of the book, as well as the marketing plan and where you fit into the book market as it currently exists. So all of that is done. We're just continuing to tweak it before we shop it to publishers.
I gotcha.
Yeah.
Are you excited about that prospect?
I am. It's been a really new incarnation for me of taking everything that I've learned professionally and personally and putting it into this one space. And the only reason that I catalyzed in the first place to do this was not because I initially wanted to. I actually felt like it was pretty masochistic to write another book. It's really, really hard and long process. And as we talked about, it's not that there's money in books. It's really about something that you feel really compelled to do and to write and to share with the world. And so the only reason that I did it was I couldn't deny how often I was getting questions from people on how do you live the life that you do? And when I dug in, they meant, how do you travel for pleasure 50 to 60% of the time? How do you run these companies? How do you work with celebrities like Deepak Chopra and Shaquille O'Neal? And, the list goes on. And how do you be in rooms like Davos, TED, and the UN? And they were saying to me, it's not just necessarily that I want those exact things, but they're saying, I want to be able to define success for myself like that. I want to be able to figure out how to do that and not just be in the cookie cutter, 9 to 5, keeping up with the Joneses or otherwise. So I thought, I've been a student of this. If anything, I am curious. So I thought, let me put it all in one place for other people to have access to.
And what do you think, if you're distilling, is there 1 or 2 key lessons that you feel are important to you that give the book a spine of sorts? No pun intended.
Well, certainly more than 1 or 2, but I'd say the foundation for it is just the stopping and the intentionality, that if one doesn't question what other people tell them success looks like and make sure that it actually sits well with what they want for themselves, which is a lot harder than it sounds, because for most people, we've been so conditioned to believe that success looks like fill in the blank. It's, checking the boxes of get the job, get the car, get the, 2.5 kids, get the house, get the prestigious accolades. But often it's this chasing of when I get those things, I'm going to finally feel fulfilled or happy. And when we get there, we realize that was all a mirage. And that if you can't be happy during the process of that, then what's the point of it in the first place? So if we can really stop for a second and think, why am I putting the energy and time into these things? And what is it that I'd really rather be doing with that? What do I want to do in this world? What legacy do I want to leave? What are my actual values? What makes me feel energized and fulfilled? That's where you can really begin to map it out and move your actions into that direction.
Yeah. And, as we said, so much revolves around your life circumstances. So much revolves around your financial literacy.
Totally.
Because if you don't have the means, or if you're always having to pay back, the Shylocks, so to speak, then you're never going to be able to reach that easily, for sure.
Well, and the irony is that for so many of us, we have this idea in our mind that the life that's going to make us happy costs some insurmountable number, when in fact, one of the exercises I really believe in is once you have some idea of what it is you want your life to look like, that you assign dollar values to it, even the intangible things. So when I did this for the first time when I was 23, I remember it was things like get a hammock, get a cat, go to all the milestones of my friends, travel once a month for pleasure. And I would think, okay, well, what would it cost me to actually be at those events, to take those flights, to get those hotels, to pay for that pet, to, have the time freedom to do these things. And when I backed it out, I realized it was about $10,000 a month after taxes that I would need to make to live my dream life, which made it a lot more achievable. Even at 23, that felt like a lot of money. However, I was able to say, okay, let me reverse engineer this. if my cost is $10,000 net a month, what does my business need to generate to get me there? And I knew that my average customer at the time was $45 a month in recurring revenue. So how many of those did I need to bring on to get to that point? And I was able to have a strategy to get there, which I was able to then do. And so it often becomes so much more achievable when we break it down and make it tangible, but we have to know where we want to go in the first place. And then the ironic part of this is you would then also have to have a loose grip on it instead of holding so tightly and saying, well, that's the thing that I absolutely have to do. Because often things will change and circumstances will change and your tastes and preferences will change and things are out of our control and you have to hold loosely to that and let them be what they are. But it's great to have a direction so you know where you're going.
Yeah, you've got a map.
Absolutely.
You know, you got to be willing to take a side journey every now and then because it's going to happen.
Yes.
And life isn't easy or fair.
Definitely not.
Well, that's pretty exciting. So what's the timetable for the release of the book in a perfect world?
Probably 2 more years.
That's the challenge. I'm surprised that you're willing to go down that path in some respects because you lose all control of timetables. And, you know, that's one thing talking to writers I hear, that if you're not patient, it's a really hard pill to swallow.
Yeah, you have to be really patient and you have to dually map out the book creation with the marketing because once it comes out, then you're on this whole other train on the marketing and promotion. Yeah. So, you know, all in, it'll probably be a 5-year process of ideation to execution to publication to marketing. So it's long.
Yeah, people don't realize. They think, oh, you're a writer, great, or you're a musician. And it's like, that part
so
is
similar.
Great. It's great. But then once I have the book, once I have the CD, now the other side has to come into play and the real work begins because the other stuff was fun.
Totally. Which is exactly why self-publishing and all of these arenas have become so popularized. But yeah, you kind of have to assess and decide which pros and cons are better for your circumstances.
Well, and realize that sometimes it's better to let somebody else do the lifting in this respect or that respect because you're not going to have the energy forever or the focus. I mean, my problem is I'm like a crow. Ooh, shiny thing, right? Shiny thing. Yeah. I can go for a while. And if you give me this, I can do that. But if then you're going to ask me to do all the, the ledger work, no, I'm going to disappear. So,
yeah. It's so important to do the things that you're best at and hand off the other stuff.
Yeah. When we can. That's
absolutely.
True. That's
especially in the early startup days, that's not always an option.
Right.
But when you can, it's fantastic.
So what else is going on? Is that it?
Is that
all you're doing? Come on.
Well, Deepak Chopra and I recently launched a video series together, so that's been a lot of fun.
How does that happen?
How does that happen? So last summer, in the early stages of the creation of this book proposal, I realized how important it would be for me to understand who my audience was and get to know them and start to build a relationship with them. So I decided to have what I'd consider my coming out party for this, and I created a virtual summit, so an online conference that was totally free, and the only real barrier to entry was that you had a Wi-Fi connection. And it was 3 days, all online, and it had 45 world-class speakers like Deepak Chopra and Adam Grant and Kat Cole, who's a local wonderful friend, and many other people who were talking about really this equation that I shared with you that the book stands for. And so Deepak initially wasn't on. I didn't know him. But Deepak was one of my mentors from afar. And what I mean by that is we often have mentors who don't know us, but we know them and we study their materials. And so he was on my wish list. And connection, I think, is something I do really well. And I was able to get connected to his publicist. And his publicist said, this sounds really great and interesting. Who else is doing it? And so I listed the people who were, and they said, okay, great. Let us know who else is doing it. And I thought, okay, I'm going to have to kick this over somehow. So I reached out to my friend Rebecca, and I'd known Rebecca for years. And when we met, I had no idea, but later found out that she used to be Deepak's COO. And I didn't want to ask her for her help initially. I wanted to respect that that's a really dear connection. But I eventually said, listen, Rebecca, here's where I am with the publicists. If you feel like you'd be willing, can you let him know that I'm legit and this is legit? So a couple hours later, I got a text message from her that was a screenshot of her communication with Deepak. And shortly thereafter, he said yes. So about a week later, I was in New York interviewing him for the summit. And I thought that was going to be it until serendipity had me hired by Chase Bank 3 months later to be their on-site correspondent for their Atlanta conference, where I got to interview Deepak again, as well as Cam Newton. And
At the same time?
yeah, actually, we were all in the same green room, and it was pretty cool because Cam was fanning out over Deepak, and I got to calm him down because Deepak had known me and was being so
You'd
kind.
already been through that
Yeah, I
once.
mean, he was kind to both of us. Of course, he's Deepak, but so it was great. I got to see him again, and then his publicist took a liking, and I interviewed him twice more in 2018 for Forbes, where I write. And at the end of the year, I thought, you know what? I just want to reach out to Deepak and tell him how grateful I am for our collaborations, which I had, of course, done after each step. But I also wanted to share with him that I'm here in his corner and as a cheerleader for him if he needed anything in the following year. And 15 minutes later, I got an email from him saying, you know, I was reflecting too, and I think that you can help me. And we went ping-ponging back and forth over emails into about a 20-minute conversation that resulted in this creation of this video series together that we've now been releasing every week since January. So it's been this really fun project, sitting side by side with Deepak, translating deep topics to make them relatable for people in 3 to 5 minute videos, and learning a lot along the way personally.
So is this kind of like a webinar, or is it all just...
They're YouTube videos.
It's just YouTube videos?
Yeah.
And so then you just add them as you add them?
Every
or-
Wednesday we release them on mine, and he releases every Monday.
So have you done them all? You've already recorded everything, and so now it's just the release?
Yeah, we
so you
have...
wrote the book, and
Yeah,
now
much
you're
like-
promoting the book.
Well, sort of. We were recording as we were going for a while. It was all happening in real time. And then we were able to backlog enough, much like probably you do with your podcasts, where now I think we're lined up through midsummer.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Is there an end point, or is it just a kind of a, let's see where it goes?
We'll see. I mean, Deepak is not a planner, as one might suspect, and he's really a let's just see how it unfolds. And I'm totally cool with that.
Yeah, it's kind of a fun little thing, I'm sure.
It's been really wonderful.
So what's the title of it?
It's called Diving Deep with Deepak and Darrah.
Lots of D's.
Alliteration.
And the concept is just...
Making the deep relatable and translatable into your life.
Yeah, well, that's great. So you didn't mention it before, but you kind of hinted. You just kind of dropped little things, like writing an article for Forbes and this and that. So
Yes.
on the side, are you also a journalist? Is that kind
I
of,
wouldn't call myself
or-
a journalist. I feel like that's an insult to actual
To real
journalists.
journalism, yeah.
But I definitely am a writer. I've been writing for outlets like Entrepreneur, Forbes, and Thrive Global for the last 5 or 6 years.
And how did that come about?
Similarly to random connections in the world, I was on a trip to LA, met up with a gentleman who was in an organization I was a part of called the Young Entrepreneurs Council. And he said, oh, I've read some of your articles because I had just one-off written for a few spots before that. And he said, aside from my business, I write for Entrepreneur, and I think that the editor would like your stuff. Do you want me to introduce you? And I said, absolutely, because I knew that writing is a muscle and I wanted to exercise it. And also, I really felt compelled to have a platform where I could elevate other people's stuff in a way that they might not have access to otherwise. So, you know, fast forward, it worked, and that opened doors to the other outlets.
Boy, you've just got a wild ride, don't you?
It's been nonlinear and fun.
So you get the book, you've got the video series. Obviously, there's always something else you're reaching for. There's something else you're thinking about, I got a feeling. What's...
Not necessarily. At this point, a lot of what I'm doing is creating free resources for people on the topics that have to do with the book, because I just want people to not have to wait for years, and I want people to have access to this information without any barrier to entry. So, you know, I put a lot of stuff on my website, like a free masterclass with Deepak on living a more meaningful life, or a guide called The Shit No One Tells You About Starting a Business, or a guide called The 55 Best Questions to Ask to Break the Ice and Really Get to Know Someone. And then lots of other good content in there to help people who are on this journey themselves.
Yeah. But you don't see, are you not a planner either? So that you're not looking past the book release to say, what do I do after that?
It's interesting. I historically was a very type A planner. My one goal for 2019 was to have less goals. I really wanted to let things unfold and evolve and not try and direct them so much myself. And so far it's working fine. So
Right. You're still eating, right? You're
exactly.
okay.
Things are going just fine. So yeah, I'm trying that on.
Well, that's good. What did you study when you were in school?
Religion and Italian. So super obvious things that take you into the world of business.
At the time, were you thinking, I'm going to be a nun in Italy? Or what was your
a Jewish
thought
nun
there?
in Italy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I went to Emory with the intention to study business and photography. And I quickly learned that I didn't want to focus on business, that I wanted to study more broadly liberal arts. And I loved languages, and I was able to convince my parents that because I wanted a career in fashion at the time, that I should speak the fashion languages, and I already spoke French and English, so I should also speak Italian. So that was one of my first sales. And then religion was just an interesting one for me because when I was in high school, I had a personal religious conversion experience. And it really opened my eyes to wanting to learn more. And bottom line, I felt like if I could better understand people's beliefs, I could better understand them. And that was really important to me. So that's why I studied religion.
And it's worked out, right?
It has.
I think a lot of people don't realize that education is that's pretty much all you need to know. Education is a word. Right? Mm-hmm. It doesn't mean you need to study just finance because you need to know a lot more if you're going to live a full life or find, like you say, the purpose that you need.
Yeah.
And it's some of those broader things, like the concept that Steve Jobs, studied calligraphy and that turned his mind in different ways.
Yeah.
But that's what they do.
Yeah, you've got to stay creative and on your toes. And I think for me, at least, college was a place to learn. And unless I knew I wanted to specialize in something like accounting or engineering or medicine, then why not?
Yeah.
So I was fortunate to be able to take those chances.
That's great.
What did you study?
I was a dance major. No.
I was like, that's amazing.
I know. I was going to let you roll with it. And I said,
like,
I'm not
what
going to do
style?
that. Yeah, what happened to you, boy? No. No, I was a journalism major.
Oh, okay. So you're the real journalist here.
I was, yeah, once upon a time. So.
I'm glad I didn't wear that hat and pretend.
Yeah. Hey, I didn't say I was a good journalist. I said I was a journalist
you actually got the title.
Yeah. So, I like telling stories. That's why I do this. I like sharing stories. That's really the thing. So I find that's my superpower, that I can get people to learn things from other people. I'm the conduit more than anything else.
That's really important.
Well, it works for me, so that's it. Well, is there anything else you wanted to talk about?
No.
Did we cover all the bases we needed to check off whatever boxes we're supposed to check off?
We certainly talked about my career trajectory.
Well, but it informs where you are on some level. Though, I get a feeling we could talk for like an hour and a half and there would still be a whole lot of questions.
Well, I'll take that as a compliment.
Well, yeah, I think so. But jumping into the financial services is kind of a, I guess you grew up with it to some degree. So it
definitely influenced me.
Yeah. And you obviously get along with your brother. So that's another big plus because a lot of people don't.
Well, ironically, we've never been close friends and we still aren't.
Yeah.
But we get along well as business partners. We're perfectly complementary in that way. He's the true operations mind and I'm the true business development mind, and they pair really nicely.
Yeah. And and the relationship, it's much like film, music, anything else. You don't always have to love each other like outwardly, but you know where the hot buttons are.
Totally.
You know when you've pushed too far.
Yeah, and there's this inherent trust. I always say if you can share a womb, you can share a business, because at the end of the day, I know that if he says he's going to do something, I can trust him. I know he's not behind the scenes stealing and embezzling. I know that I can trust his characters and his integrity. Yeah. And that is really foundational when you're building something together.
Yeah, especially when you're spending so much time and energy and pouring your heart and soul into it. What does he think about your other adventures? Does he have other adventures too?
He does.
What is he doing?
He started a sports tech company a handful of years ago which is sort of taking over the space of trivia at bars. And it's an app that's prop betting for live sporting events. It's about the best I can explain because I know nothing about sports.
You just know that you heard the word betting and you go, that's money. I know what's going on with that.
Yeah, except it's for prizes since the betting became illegal on online betting many years ago.
Yeah, well, all that's going to change, real fast, real soon. So hopefully he's in a good place. Well, thanks for coming in. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me.
Yeah. If people want to find out or want to learn more, what's the best way? How would you guide them?
My website, it's just darrah.co, darrah.co. I'm also pretty prolific on Instagram, sharing stuff every day that I hope is adding value to other people. And just at Darrah B. As always, that's it for another Good Gracious podcast. Hope you enjoyed it. Check out some of those YouTube videos. Darrah does some amazing stuff. She's also got some really inspirational social media links, so well worth checking out. And Tyler's around town. You need to go find him when he's out there, and just enjoy some of the good music. So, of course, you can always find this and other podcasts at goodgraciousshow.com. Or you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, whatever. The social medias are getting a little out of hand in my mind. I'm trying to find a way to trim back and make it a better experience, not necessarily a more experience. So we'll see what happens, and planning on some fall, maybe August, Good Gracious show for next live show. Got some crazy plans cooking, maybe even taking it on the road a little bit, doing something maybe up in Dunwoody, even visited a location in Canton, some beautiful spaces. It's just a matter of connecting all the dots, putting everything in motion. So I hope you are doing wonderful. I wish a happy and smooth summer for you. And be a good neighbor. Go hug someone, and we'll talk to you next week.